All right, interpreting real GDP. This is how we calculate GDP. Right? So what does GDP tell us? Okay? And again, if you're looking at current events, if you're looking at the news at all, right, you're going to hear a lot of talk about GDP. So it's the value of current production at current prices. All right? So if I want to know how much we produced in 2013, we would look at nominal GDP. We look at what we made in 2013, at how much it cost, and that will give us the nominal GDP for that year. This is one of those real good examples of it might sound confusing as I talk to you about it, but tomorrow when you start working on it, it's going to make more sense. Tembi, stop that. Okay, so nominal GDP can be misleading. We don't talk a whole lot about nominal GDP. We want to know about real GDP, right? Because we're concerned with the stuff. GDP is concerned with stuff, the amount of stuff we're producing. It's a dollar value because that's the way we measure it, okay? So when we talk about real GDP, and this is another really important thing to understand, anytime you see the word real GDP, real wages, real interest rate, we're going to be talking a lot about these. Real reflects accounting for price changes, okay? So, for example, real wages. I'm making $20 an hour this year. I could be making $20 an hour next year. But if prices go up 5%, I'm not really making $20 an hour. My real wage has declined, right? Real GDP, we're looking at changes in price. So, how do we calculate real GDP? Normally, GDP is price times quantity, okay? So, we take how much we produced, multiply it by the price, right? If prices rise, though, and I'm making the same amount, it's going to seem like we're making more, right? Even though the size of the economy hasn't increased, things have just gotten more expensive. And remember, with GDP, we're concerned with output, the amount of stuff. So in order to get real GDP, we need to use a fixed point in time. We need to use what we call a base year. And now, if we compare everything to the base year, prices are constant, and now we know if the value has gotten higher, it must be because we made more. And again, you'll see this. If you don't get it now, you will see it very vividly when we do it tomorrow in practice. So, if we take 2013 production and we measure it at 2012 prices, right, we can compare it to that base year, and we'll see if things have gotten up. All right, I'm just going to show you. She's just hanging out, squeaking her toy like a little dog. All right. So, this is a formula that you guys should be familiar with, okay? New minus old over old times 100. This will give us the percent increase. It will let us know how much GDP has changed. So, the first value is the current year, the year that we're talking about. Initial value is the base year, or the second year we're comparing, and you multiply that by 100. Let me put it back up. You'll see this formula again if you don't get it right now. It's not the end of the world, but this is a really important one for our class. So let's take a look at this for a minute. All right, so how do we get nominal GDP? Right? So we multiply the current prices by current levels of output. Don't worry about writing this down. You will have plenty of chances to do this. Just kind of watch what's going on and see if you can follow along. So we've made 100 pairs of sneakers at $100 each, and we've made 80 tons of grapes at $50 each. So 100 times 100 is 10,000. 80 times 50 is 4,000. So nominal GDP for 2007 is $14,000. Do the same thing for 2008. Nominal GDP for 2008 is $20,100. But we don't know. I mean, here we can look at it and eyeball it and tell. But if we were adding up the entire economy and the number was higher, we wouldn't know did things get more expensive or did we make more. So what do? We're going to use 2007 as the base year, and we'll take 2008 quantities times 2007 prices. And now we'll know, since prices is constant, a higher number must mean we produced more stuff. And so if you do this, right, so there's a 43.6 per change in nominal GDP. 20,000 minus 14,000 over 14,000 times 100 gets you a 43% change. But again, we don't care too much about nominal GDP. So let's look at real GDP, right? We're keeping 2007 levels to compute real GDP. Now, what do you think real GDP is going to be in the base year? It's going to be the same as nominal GDP. All right, let me get there first, right? Yes, nominal GDP and in the base year is always going to be the same as real GDP in the base year. So this is a great thing that they love to ask, right? They won't tell you what the base year is. They'll just give you a list of nominal and real GDP. So if nominal and real are equal, boom, base year, you know it. And now we're going to look at 2008 output by 2007 prices. And you get 15,000, right? So we know real GDP has risen by $1,000, right? Not the 20,000 with nominal GDP, right? If we looked at nominal, that would make it seem like it was a huge increase, right? And so if we do a percent change, we got 15,000 minus 14,000 divided by 14,000 times 100, and real GDP increased by 7.1%. And like I said, you'll do this, you'll do it a couple times, and you'll be like, this is like the easiest math I've ever done. And when it comes to the AP test and my tests, you can't even use a calculator. So that makes it even easier because it's math you can do in your head almost, okay? So what are some problems with GDP? I think this is really, really important, right? And I just saw an article, and there'll be some participation points about this because I don't think we talk about this enough. Right? Many of the things that make people happy don't contribute to GDP, right? For example, I gave some guy $700 for, not $700, whatever, I forget what, $500 for my puppy, right? Not counted as part of GDP, right? But it's been a great thing. It's been fun to have her around, right? We don't count leisure activity. When you read a book, when you take a walk, when you go outside and play catch, when you go to the beach, right? When you teach your child how to read. None of that's counted as part of GDP, but those are important things. They make a society better. And when you work around the house, not helping the economy, right? So we're only counting market activities when we talk about GDP. Here's some more shortcomings, right? Some things that we contribute to GDP don't make us happier, okay? Let's say you're putting bars on your windows at your house. Well, you're buying something that contributes to GDP, but what's going on? You're putting bars on your windows, right? Your neighborhood's not good. You don't want to do that, right? So it's a little bit misleading. Imagine two economies. One makes assault rifles, one makes ice cream. Both adds to GDP. Which one are you going to want to live in, right? Probably the one with ice cream. You don't want people running around with rifles and things like that. Same thing with pollution, okay? Same thing with a natural disaster, right? Sure, we can pay money to clean up our polluted waterways. It adds to GDP, but that's not the sign of a good economy and in a happy country. And this is why you'll notice, and you'll have the chance to listen to an episode of, you know, people always talk about the Scandinavian countries being so happy, right? They don't have the GDP. Their GDP isn't close to the number that ours is, yet they're so much happier. Why is this? Why are we so focused on this number, this GDP number, rather than what makes us happy? And I think this is important to consider. Okay? Okay, and then spending money to fight preventable diseases, right? We're putting a lot of money into COVID. I don't think there's a single person that would say, great, our GDP is going up because of COVID. We want to be doing stuff, right? So GDP could be improving at some point, but we would rather not have it, okay? more shortcomings. Non-market activities are not counted. We don't count leisure time, right? The stuff we do in our free time that makes us happy. We don't look at the products that have improved, right? So we could be spending more money or less money. We could be producing less things. For example, our phones have such good cameras that maybe people don't buy cameras as much, right? So maybe it looks like we're making less stuff, but we have better quality phones, for example. We don't look at the underground economy, right? That's not counted. But that money is spent still to buy things, so it's still part of it. And then GDP and the environment, I talked about this a little bit, right? How do you quantify clean air? How do you quantify clean waterways and things like that? It's not counted in GDP. And then this is something that they talk a lot about in America, right? You know, you hear the stock market's doing well, right? We don't distribute our gains equally. Some people gain a lot and others don't participate in those gains, okay? And then non-economic sources of well-being, spending time with your family, right? A mom that's able to stay home with her children. She's not contributing to GDP, but this is a great thing that we should encourage.